Today we're going to talk about the so-called Sustainable Development Goals. Those have been proposed by the United Nations, one of the, or probably the largest intergovernmental organization in the world, where almost all countries or nations on this planet are members of. It has been established right after the Second World War in 1945 with two quite intuitive main goals. There are some other sub-goals, but those are the main goals here. First, maintaining international peace, something that makes sense right after the Second World War, and also fostering international cooperations among those members. It's organized into 6 principal bodies and some autonomous specialized agencies. So among the bodies are the General Assembly, something that you might have heard of, or the Security Council or the UN Secretariat. And then other specialized agencies also belong to this larger body of the United Nations, like the World Health Organization. And the United Nations General Assembly proposed in 2015 these so-called Sustainable Development Goals, or in short, SDGs. Those are 17 interlinked goals, so that means they depend on each other, and it doesn't really make sense to fulfill just one of them. You always have a dependency to get another goal. And they are supposed to be achieved by 2030 by all UN member states, so by all 193 states. And each goal is typically divided into, or has something like 8 to 12 targets, and each of those targets has 1 to 4 indicators. So you have 17 goals, 8 to 12 targets per goal, and then 1 to 4 indicators per target to measure the progress towards reaching the targets and then subsequently the Sustainable Development Goal. And they are supposed to be a blueprint to achieve a better and more sustainable future for all people and the world by 2030. While recording this in 2023, this became quite ambitious because since the proposal in 2015 and now we're at 8 years and we're not really close to achieving them, so we have 7 more years to do that. Ambitious goal at best, or at least. And those are the 70 SDGs. First, eradicating poverty and hunger, so that those are the first 2 goals. Then the third goal is providing good health and well-being to everyone. And we have quality education and gender equality. From there on, moving to clean water and sanitation and providing affordable and clean energy. Decent work and economic growth, as well as industry, innovation, and infrastructure is also among the goals. Then number 10, reduced inequalities. 11, sustainable cities and communities. Responsible consumption and production. Climate actions and life below water, as well as life on land, so that you cover both. Peace, justice, and strong institutions, and partnerships for the goals is the last one. So you can already see that they're quite broad in their, like how they are phrased, and this is why we have those separate or additional indicators below, so 8 to 12 targets, and then 1 to 4 indicators to structure that a little bit more properly, and then also making it more specific. But in general, they are more broader to be achieved, especially the last one with respect to partnership and other stuff. The problem or the challenge is that all of those goals are depending on each other, which makes it a little bit more difficult. And also that they are like, they were talking about the multi-dimensional space. So we have all the 3 dimensions of sustainability that we talked about earlier. So economic, ecological, and social. And having these 3 dimensions makes it, of course, a little bit more difficult to get everything into like one pot and achieve all of them. Many of the goals focus on society, and some of them on like the more the ecological parts of our system, but in general there's no prioritization between the different goals because all of them are supposed to be treated equal, and they're also supposed to be achieved all together. You cannot achieve sustainability according to the Sustainable Development Goals if you only achieve 3 out of 17 or 16 out of 17. They're supposed to be achieved all together, and that by 2030. So that is a little bit challenging to not prioritize them because it puts you a little bit under pressure and also makes the way on how you handle them a little bit more complicated, because intuitively you would say water and food and shelter and energy, so something that you need for survival, might get a higher priority then maybe good partnership to achieve those goals, or quality education, because if you don't have water and food, quality education doesn't get you anywhere because you're already dead. So those things, like being vital prerequisites for any human life, intuitively are prioritized higher, but according to the SDGs, they should be treated with the same priority as the other goals. So that's like one challenge in achieving those goals. The other challenge, that we almost have no time left to achieve them. We talked about that before. But yeah, those are also among the list. Another challenge is that each goal by itself does not guarantee sustainability. So you have to fulfill all 17. Achieving all goals is quite challenging, especially if you have stakeholders focusing on particular goals, which are special problems for them. So let's say a country that is often suffering from droughts might prioritize water higher than, I don't know, something else. Or a country that doesn't have any life underwater might not really care about that goal that much. So you can see like there are various reasons why stakeholders might focus on particular goals, but you have to achieve all of them together. And achieving all of them together might be a problem, not only because like you have different priorities, but also because you might only have limited resources in terms of time. We already said we're running out of time, but then also of course in terms of financial resources or other resources that might be required, because you cannot afford to do all of them. So those are like adding to the large pieces or the large chunk of challenges that we're already building up here. And they also have the problem of potential trade-offs and incompatibilities between different goals. Zero hunger versus environmental stability. In order to get zero hunger, you might have to sacrifice things like life below water or life on land. We talked about that in other lectures, that we're running out of farmable land, but also that we're polluting our oceans so much that the ecosystem is about to collapse, or at least closer to collapsing, and very much like we're taking a lot of energy out of the system that otherwise might be there. So challenging. You also have conflicts maybe between economic growth and decent work, because usually you get economic growth not really by paying your workers well enough to have a great life. This is at least what capitalism in the last, 100 years told us. So there are conflicts between those things. And the SDGs also have a potential risk for or of greenwashing, that you find something that fits one of those goals and then you're trying to use it to advertise X, Y, or Z, but in the end it's just greenwashing. So you can just take an SDG, put it in front of your product and call this is great and sustainable because we're fulfilling an SDG with that, but in the end it's just greenwashing, as we've discussed it many, many times before in this lecture series. And that is a short history or a short story of the so-called Sustainable Development Goals. We did not want to make it a super long lecture series because we want to just give you a little bit of an overview. That the Sustainable Development Goals exist. They have been proposed by the United Nations. They are supposed to be fulfilled by all UN member states by 2030. The 17 goals have to be achieved all together to guarantee sustainability. Just achieving 15 or 16 out of 17 doesn't do it. But it's also going to be super hard to even get close to doing that because we're running out of time. There are conflicts for the stakeholders and partners who have to achieve those goals. Some of the goals itself are conflicting among each other. So it's quite difficult, but those are the 17 SDGs. And this is a short history or a short summary of the SDGs that we wanted to communicate to you.